We are in the studio with Michael Pollan. If you miss any of our shows, don't forget to catch them on KCAAradio.com. They're all archived there. Or you can catch us on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, the Android. Look for the Building Solid Foundations channel app on any of those, or on your favorite podcast platform. So Michael Pollan's my guest today, and he is a United States and international business and entertainment attorney with over 27 years of experience. He's dealt with legal, project deal negotiations, and entrepreneurialism. He is an author and creator of the recently released Teach Me China brand, a comprehensive educational product series, including CDs, DVDs, workbooks, on the how-tos of doing business in China from an entrepreneurial, investor, and legal point of view. And we're going to cover lots of different things because Michael's got a broad background and a load of experience and education and knowledge, and we're just going to scratch the surface today. Welcome, Michael. Great to have you.
Hey, good to see you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So I met Michael through another common connection of ours. I found that networking and building relationships in any business leads to meeting other people, who leads to meeting other people, who leads to meeting other people, and you never know who you're going to run into and how you can work with them, collaborate with them, and learn from them. So Michael, I want to talk to you about a few things. Obviously, you know that I deal in real estate, and I'm going to save that for a later segment.
Sure.
Because I can get deep in the weeds on that one. That's my passion. But I want to talk to you about some things that also are interesting to me. And the nice thing I like about having this show is I just talk about whatever I think is interesting to whoever I think is an interesting person. So, IP is a big issue right now in intellectual property. It used to be that not many people had to deal with it or think they had to deal with it, but with the proliferation of social media, the internet, YouTube, almost everybody has some kind of intellectual property out there, and I think most people don't realize it, and there's value to it. There are YouTube videos that 10 years after they got posted all of a sudden blow up and go viral, and pretty soon they're copied everywhere else. And people say, well, they didn't get any money out of that. Well, it's because they didn't do what they should have to protect it in the first place, even though they didn't think it was anything. So let's talk a little bit about intellectual property. And I wanted to also approach this from an international, because the internet is in fact international. There's nothing you do today that's not international if you're putting it anywhere online. So first, let's talk about what intellectual property is and then how to protect it.
So, the basics on IP are going to be copyrights, trademarks, and patents.
Now, copyrights, I only get that if I file with the Library of Congress, or is that automatic?
No, it's not. No, that's a great question, especially internationally. It's a great question because the laws are really very different. You own the copyright the moment you put it on a piece of paper. You don't have to put a C on it with a circle. You don't have to file with the Copyright Office. But the big difference is when you file, you then set a timer. So anybody in the future that says that they created something and you say, well, wait a second, I created that first, what's the date of creation? If you have an actual filing with the Copyright Office, you have a stamp, you have a date, you have a registration. Okay. That clock is known. No matter what anybody else says, it's known.
Now, does that also include a publishing on YouTube or something like that?
It does, and it does. And so the first date of publication is the date of publication, whatever you disseminate it to wherever you put it. That you own it from that moment on. And so people don't understand that. But the real benefit to filing with the Copyright Office, whatever that is if you have to get into an infringement conversation down the road, a breach of some nature, you get treble damages if you filed with the Copyright Office. You don't get that if you didn't file. That'll matter later. If you're arguing over $100,000, now you're really arguing over $400,000. So people don't realize that, and they think, well, aren't I always protected? The answer is yes, you are. But the damages later will make a big difference to you depending on what it is you created. So I always tell people, go ahead and file. It's cheap, too. It's so inexpensive.
It's inexpensive and easy. You do it online. It takes about 15 minutes.
You don't need me. You don't need a lawyer. You need some expertise to understand what you're filing.
Unlike a trademark.
Right.
Trademarks and patents are different.
Very different.
But copyrights are through the Library of Congress pretty easy. Now, let me ask you a question. Does it have to be through Library of Congress in the U.S.? What about other private groups like, say, the Writers Guild you can register things there?
That would just be a starting point again on the clock.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, here's the cheap and easy. This is what people used to do. I don't recommend it, but people do it still. Send yourself a letter.
That in the old days, that was what you do. If you wrote a little manuscript, you'd mail yourself a manuscript and keep it sealed, and it had the cancellation date from the post office.
And that would be also equivalent to a writers guild because you would
Right.
file it with the writers guild. Then there's the stamp that they got it that day.
Okay.
So both of those are the cheap and easy to do it. They don't get you any trouble damages. You got to sue anybody later, and also it doesn't give anybody notice.
Okay.
On the Copyright Office, there's notice. It's public. I could put in Steve Matley, and whatever you filed is coming up.
Okay.
Say, or if I could put in Ghostbusters, and whoever filed anything ever on that is in there. Writers Guild doesn't have any database. It's not like that. If you send it to yourself, nobody knows about it. So you do want as much publication as you can get when you first file a copyright.
And it doesn't have to be written works. It can be audio or visual works
Absolutely.
as well. Now, let me ask a question on that. So let's say I'm a influencer and I have a daily podcast or a daily vlog I'm doing. Do I have to file each one of those separately every single day I do those with the Copyright
You
Office?
don't, because a podcast in particular is a serial filing. So basically, you take Steve Smatley's podcast every day, you have a file on that, then everything you add to it is automatically included.
Okay. So for as long as I do it, I don't have to keep
Yes.
filing.
Right, that's
Okay,
correct.
not every episode. Okay, that's interesting. And now, when we go international, what changes?
Lots, because the filing requirements are very different. I'm going to give you a 1-minute nightmare,
Okay.
so your audience can understand it. You open this show talking about China because I've got 30 years there,
Right.
but I've got 30 years in Europe and Asia. I mean, so I've filed probably 100
So
copyrights.
30 years in China, 30 years.
So
in
I'm
China.
90.
That's 90. I was
I'm
going to
90
say,
years
yeah,
old now.
it's
That's great.
remarkably good for that age.
So I'm going to give you an example of something that's really bad. So in China, they reversed the American law. The American law is this: first to publish owns. In China, first to file owns.
Okay, so it's more of a claim it.
Yeah, and that's why if you look at the basic histories of all the copyright infringements in China, you see the burial field of Michael Jordan, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Apple. I was involved with a lot of these deals because the Chinese, as one guy in Taiwan, went out and copyrighted all those brands.
Okay.
Now you might say, what were their lawyers doing? Why hadn't they already copyrighted all this stuff in China? It's hindsight. Okay, 30 years ago, people weren't thinking like this. Michael Jordan wasn't thinking like that.
Yeah. Well,
Nike-
30 years ago,
Nike
Michael
wasn't
Jordan was
thinking
just
about it.
making a name for himself.
Right.
He didn't know he'd become a trademark.
But he did, and these guys they beat him to it. Then you get these lawsuits there like, hey, he said, I own my name. No, you don't. In America, you do. Your face, name, and likeness, you own it. You do nothing, you own it. There, you got to file to own it. And these guys did. So
You have
that's
to
a
file in every
gigantic.
single country?
Just China.
Oh,
Right now
just
we're talking-
China, okay.
It's first to file. Europe had a first to file also, but it's more Americanized now.
Okay.
It's because they knew you can't exist like that. Nobody will do business with you if they think they're going to lose their brand to some guy on the street who just files Nike.com and owns it.
Right.
Nike will say, we're not doing business with you anymore. They tighten things down. China is a little different. Asia is a little different. They don't really care so much about Americans pounding on them.
Right. Okay. Well, and I think the companies now that are working there, I think they're partnered with the Chinese government.
They're
mostly.
forced into it.
Yeah.
That's a forced partnership. But
Right.
yes, that's true.
So they'll get the backing of the government, who has a lot at stake there too.
But there's gigantic risk still. And there's backdoor deals going on 24/7, which
Right.
is not good.
Right. And people have to understand that the world you live in isn't the world everybody lives in. We have this idea as humans that our experience is common to everybody, and in fact, it's not.
I think let me make an exclamation point on that. Part of what I teach, and my company is called the teachmeacademy.com. Part of that I teach is that point. Do not have any assumptions or reference points when you do business internationally. That is very difficult for Americans,
Right.
because we have nothing but assumptions and reference points. Why? We got 100 years of business. We know what you're supposed to do or not supposed to do. Other countries don't. And so you may assume that if I sign that agreement, we have a binding agreement. Not necessarily. In other countries, that's called a holding agreement. It's not binding. Here in America, that's a binding contract between us. In other countries, it's a holding pending other terms to come. If you don't know that and you sign that, hey, I'm good to go.
So it's flexible. Yeah.
It's negotiable later,
Yeah.
after you brought in investors and spent millions of dollars on a project, and then they turn around and say, that's really not what we intended. That was a holding document. These are big problems. Okay, so you got to know what you're doing internationally.
So they treat a contract like we would treat an LOI.
MOU, LOI.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. And that's not uncommon in Asia. They're not Americanized where you need 40 pages to have a contract, which I kind of like, by the way. I like the 2-pager, but it's still got to be binding, or what's the point?
Right. So, and I think it's, we grow up in a society that was born out of a certain, there's a constitution, we came out of basic British law, and we all have a common understanding of basic rights, responsibilities, obligations, restrictions. And again, we tend to assume that the entire world operates that way. And most of the world is not our culture.
It's not. And let me just put another exclamation point that's a difference that you're raising right now. In America, the reason why our contracts usually are going to be held up is because we have a concept called law of intended consequence.
Right.
We know that if we sign a contract and we breach it or we don't do what we're supposed to do, you're going to get sued or you're going to sue someone else. Asia doesn't have the concept. Just pause and think what I'm saying. If you sign a contract and you don't have an accountability for what you do wrong in that contract, what's your motivation to see it through and to honor it? Yeah, very little.
Exactly.
And that's real risky in other countries.
Yeah, we have to take a short break. So let's think on that out there, and we're going to follow up on that when we get back. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We're with Michael Pollan in the studio today, and we'll be right back after this short break.
Choose power today and help us create a cleaner planet. Over the past years, utility prices have rapidly increased. Power provides home energy solutions that would save money. Power is the world's first virtual solar company that aims to adopt sustainable energy worldwide. Our company delivers low-cost, clean, and reliable energy solutions. The solar investment allows you to become eligible for an income tax credit. The solar investment is a great way to provide long-term value. Power is the first solar company that reduces carbon footprint for a cleaner environment. Power is experienced and one of the fastest growing solar companies in the United States, which provide the best solutions according to your needs. Call today for your free solar consultation. Join us as one of our ambassadors and earn $1,000. Earn $1,000 when the installation is completed. Free sign up at www.power.com/marie.waite/ambassador. Feel good about what powers your life. Marie Waite, your solar consultant. 951-378-5316. Enjoy your life with solar.com.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Most mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are with Michael Pollan. He is a U.S. and international business and entertainment attorney. Before the break, we were talking about intellectual property, the difference between domestic, international, how to protect yourself, and all the assumptions people have that lead them down the wrong path a lot of times when they go out of their own backyard. And that pertains not just to intellectual property. So as we kind of teased in the first part, I want to get into a little bit of real estate. As most of the listeners know, that's kind of my background, and what I do is real estate development and construction management and property management. So Michael, we were during the break. You were telling me that you just wrapped up something in Belize, which is obviously international, and it's a different world, and you're dealing with American people there. So recount that story for our listeners and bring them up to speed on some of the challenges.
Well, let's get back to a moment ago when I said lose your assumptions and reference points.
That's right.
International business, real estate. You have to do that also, but it's difficult. So, Steve, just think about your typical transaction. You're going to go buy and sell a condo somewhere. You get the buy, you get the sell, you get the offer. You're all good to go. You open up an escrow, right? Escrow does their thing. Then you, at the end of the escrow, you exchange money and get a grant deed.
Right.
Bye-bye. You're good. No, it doesn't work like that in other countries. In a particular country like Belize, you've got to be patient and understand the way the culture works there. There are no grant deeds in Belize. So if you start off your thought process, you're going to buy a property there, it's like, great. And what's the grant deeds look like? They're called LT. They're like lien trust, whatever that means to them. It's a grant deed to us. But if you don't know that, and I did not know that, so I had local counsel there working with me. Man, I'm trying to explain to the Americans, no, you're not going to get a grant deed. It's not going to look like that. And by the way, you're going to give them all your money. It's going to take 6 to 9 months to get this document.
Okay. So it's a 6 to 9 month escrow period, basically.
No, escrow closed.
Escrow closed.
Yeah, you still don't have your deed.
So you've transferred the money over.
You paid them. They have the money.
You're not technically the owner yet.
No, you are the owner, but you don't realize you're the owner.
Oh, I see.
Because
okay.
the Belizean government gives you a receipt of, let's just say, you filed the document with them called the LT. They got it. We're good to go. It'll take us 6 to 9 months to get the signed one back to you. In the meantime, you still own the property. You can go in the property. It's yours. You do what you want with it. But if someone says, do you have a grant deed for this? You'd have to say no.
You have no paper.
Not yet.
Okay.
You have a receipt from the government that you paid for it. You paid the other guy, and you technically own it. But I don't have a piece of paper to give you that says that. Let that sink in a little bit to your listeners. It's like, you'd be crazy. Why would you do that? Because that's the culture. It's okay. It's all legal. But you don't know that because you've never been there before. I've now done 3 deals in Belize. I'm now very comfortable with this. But each American I bring in, I got to start at the beginning and tell them what's going to happen. Now, the deed, that's just the deed process.
Now, is there any exposure during that 9 months while you're waiting for that piece of paper?
No.
No? Okay.
I'm hesitating only because as a lawyer, I always think, if I have it finalized, yeah, there's some exposure. But since I know the culture, what happens, no.
So that's another assumption.
It's another assumption you kind of have to let go of. You're like, I assume I'm going to get this. And there's a reference point to a grant.
Could you resell during that 9 months without
Yes.
that? So even if we don't have it?
You could, but if you're selling to like an American or a European, which is mostly a Belizean, they're like, what do you mean you don't have it? What are you giving me? Like, oh my God, I got to start over this process again with the buyer.
Right.
Right. Hopefully their lawyer is from Belize, so I'm not educating them. You know,
Right.
But it's tricky.
Okay.
But it's interesting too. I mean, I really enjoy doing it, and the people there are really nice. You know, of all the countries I've been involved with, that's one of my very favorite countries.
Now, I know some countries you can buy real estate as a foreigner, but the country retains a right to take that back anytime they want.
Like Mexico used to be, right?
There's no guarantee they would not return to that.
That's absolutely true.
As my lifetime, I think they've done that twice.
Me too.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of bad deals in Mexico. I don't do any business there anymore, actually. Yeah. But Belize, no, you're good to go. It's British, you know. You're good to go.
Right. But there's other countries around the world that are not in this hemisphere. That
Costa Rica.
Yeah.
It's another one. I love the place, but you buy something there, there's a risk because Costa Rica has squatter problems, really big ones. Belize, it's illegal to squat. Okay. Costa Rica, it's legal to squat. Philippines,
the Philippines legal to squat. That's right.
Well, if you're not there and someone's on your land,
you can't get them out.
Can't get them out. No, they own it.
Yeah.
There's laws that say they own it. So you got to, I always emphasize, you got to have the right lawyer representing you in these deals, but it's actually more than that. You really got to have the right people on the inside of the culture of the country. I can give you all the advice I can, but you need people there that understand what the pitfalls are if you don't do things correctly. And that's also part of the due diligence process, right, Steve? In anything in life, but in foreign countries in particular, because how does their county recorder work? Is there an MLS? What's the paper trail the government sees from a transaction?
Yeah, title insurance, all the stuff.
Title insurance, right. which doesn't exist in most of those countries.
That's right. And that is a don't do anything without it here.
There's an assumption.
Yeah, exactly.
And a reference point you have to let go of.
In other countries, that's not a thing.
Right.
Yeah. So, for what I do with my company, we will give the other party the escrow if they want that in a transaction. We always fight for the title.
Yep.
Because we only want to use the title people that we know and trust and aren't parceling it out to someone else because that's such a huge deal. Huge. That's the one that'll come back and bite you. Yeah. And then, in other countries where that's not even a thing. So.
Yeah, that's all true. And then don't get me started on China, because that's just a whole other weird world to go into.
Well, China, everything's technically owned by the government, right?
Well, but no, I have lots of clients that own the properties there, but there's just weird stuff all around it. Yeah. It's like, because, for example, if you signed off as a corporation, that's another thing. In other countries, signing off as a corporate officer is not the same as here. It doesn't bind anybody else in the company. It just really binds you. Oh, but what if you have shareholders? Right. And they disagreed with you, and you bought and sold property? They can object later. Okay, so you better make sure everybody in line.
Or if the shareholders oust you as the officer, that's not their property.
That's possible too. Yeah. So you got to make sure you know corporate structure. I know you want to talk about entities.
We're going to get into that in a later segment. Sure. Talk about business entities and structure, because I think that's important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously laws change depending on the structure you have. Now, when you go to there's people that are right now. One of the big things is out-of-state real estate if you're in California, because that's a thing. Yep. Mostly because all the U-Haul lots are empty. We're going, I guess people move other places too, and so people are learning that is nothing compared to going outside the country. Yeah. Going state to state, there's different laws and there's different kind of subcultures and different ways of doing business.
But you can understand them.
They're mostly comprehensible, but sometimes you find the biggest issue is you're not in the inside club in that community or something like that.
That's also
right?
True. Yeah.
But when you go out of the country, every single country has an entirely different set of rules they play by.
And infrastructure.
That's right. Yeah.
That you have to understand. The hardest part, I think, is that other countries' laws change. Ours don't. I mean, you know what the laws are.
They change slowly.
A little bit, but you know it's coming.
Court ruling here and there, right. Legislative action here and there, but they're slow.
Okay, let me make one point on what you just said on court action. In order for you to say that means that we start off with a series of statutes.
That's right.
Codifications, case law history. That's how we move forward.
Yeah, we challenge something that's on the books.
On the books. Yeah. Other countries don't have statutes. Europe doesn't have statutes. They don't have codifications. I practiced there. It's basically Napoleonic law, well, especially France. It's like in British go back to the Romans. I mean, you literally start going back far like that. This makes no sense. Come on, make a law. Parliament, pass a law. They don't do that. There's no statute. So it's really what happened last week. What's the last ruling you had somewhere that leads you to where you end up today? That's dangerous. You right. don't have a path that you can follow and back to law of intended consequences.
That's changing the rules in the middle of the game.
And they can very easily. And they do. So you got to be careful with
and it's hard then if you're doing it's one thing if you're doing individual property. I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to buy a vacation home, something like that. But if you're doing this as an investment and you've got other people's money in it's very difficult, because how do you put together performance supposed to be looking into the future? Well, you're looking into the future based upon what you think are a set assumptions. Right. This is the way things are, and there are givens that we don't control, like economic factors and those kind of market conditions. Right. But other than that, everything else is the same, and so we have a plan. But if all the rules that we assumed are true are not, they're gelatin. They change on whim.
Or they don't exist.
They don't exist. And so what we think is going to happen, you can't come up with solid assumptions and build a performance out of that.
It's hard, and that's true. I mean, and then we did a lot of business in Panama, which I love. Panama's a great country. But first of all, everything's in Spanish. Okay. We haven't even talked about translations at all. Yes, so you know other countries. Belize is easy; it's English.
Languages and dialects.
And dialects, and also culture understandings of what that language means. And all your contracts are usually in two languages: English and the native language. And which one do you think takes precedence?
The native language
does. And so your translations better be spot on. Better have the right guys doing it. business translators.
And the ambiguities that you would know as a native speaker aren't known
Right.
to you through a translator.
Right, absolutely correct. And that's difficult too, because I have a translator talking to me saying, Mike, you need to make sure you think about this. And like, okay, I had not thought about that. And why do I care?
Yeah.
And they're telling me this is why you need to care about that.
Yeah.
So really I pay a lot of money for translators in my history because I get the best. Business translators,
Right.
law translators, not conversational translators. They're fine, but that's not a contract guy.
Well, I think the same thing with attorney. One of the reasons you hire attorneys is they speak legalese, and terms in the legal world don't mean the same thing as terms in the conversational
Really?
world. So that's why, basically that's what an attorney is basically an interpreter for you. They read a contract different than we read. I read it and say, oh, okay, this is what it means. The attorney says, no, there's these things kind of called magic words, and if you put them together in this way, it means this legally. You just didn't know that.
And don't forget about there's a magic comma.
Yeah, magic comma, exactly. Yeah.
Where you put that comma.
We have to take another break here. When we come back, we're going to move on, and we're going to move from real estate. I want to talk a little bit about money management and banking and internationally. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are with Michael Poland today, and we will be right back after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Real men of real estate.
Men of Real Estate Radio show here on KCAA.
Boats, mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio. Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact KCAA Producer at gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's KCAA Producer at gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are with Michael Poland, international business and entertainment attorney. We've talked so far about intellectual property. We've talked about real estate dealings, and now we're going to get into money management when we get across the border, especially banking. We keep reiterating all this comes back to lose the assumptions you have based upon what your past experience is. We've all been raised in a certain environment. There's certain things we know to be true. There's Wells Fargo, there's Bank of America, there's Chase. We do business that way. There's a checking account, a savings account, there's transaction histories. But that's in the U.S. dollars. They stays pretty stable. And when we go over the border, things change a little bit. So, Michael, you worked in other countries. When we start converting dollars to other forms of currency, when we start working with banks that are based in other countries, what kind of landmines are we looking at?
Well, first of all, if it's just you traveling, Steve, you're going to go hang out somewhere. That's just money conversion. It's 2 to 1, 3 to 1.
Right.
No big deal to you. You'll figure that out.
And you actually, if you're using most credit cards, they're good internationally, and it automatically
they
translates
do.
for you.
They might charge you a currcy transaction fee. Chase doesn't, by the way.
But it translates for it. It does that for you. It figures it out.
Does.
Yeah.
But my biggest concern with the money currency is going to be in a business transaction, because that is stuff you got to figure out at the beginning of a deal. If we're going to do a joint venture deal, what's the currency in there? Who's contributing what? What's the currency in? And how am I being repaid or repatriation? In what currency? Man, you better figure that stuff out at the beginning, or you're going to lose a whole bunch of money later on thinking, good deal, we're selling products, got a market entry, I'm really happy with this joint venture. You think you're getting $1 million back and it's $80,000. You're like, where's the rest? Oh, we had currency conversion issues. We had a lot of expenses we forgot to tell you about, that stuff. Okay, now, on the banking side of it, I don't usually recommend clients get local banks. I just don't, okay, because you don't control anything, like you said a moment ago about the stability of the U.S. dollar in an American bank. We can complain about inflation all day long, but it's not the same in other countries.
Yeah, our inflation compared to globally, historically, is a very minor fluctuation.
For us, it is.
For us, for us, it's huge. But for the rest of the world, it's nothing.
Yeah, and so those are issues you consider. But the actual banking processes in other countries, that's where you lose your assumptions and you lose your reference points, because you can't just pick up the phone and go call someone, or you can't just go check on your account. You can't walk into the bank and all the way and say, "Here's my account number. Can I have my bank statements?" First of all, you made an assumption that there was a bank statement.
That's right.
And your reference point was America. Most of these countries don't have bank statements at all. And maybe you can go online and look, but if you have a question about a transaction, or that's not my expense, difficult. And it may not be in English.
Right.
So you got to plan.
So it's not in English and it's not in dollars. And so, yeah, the thing is, when you start working with international money, because you have the reference point of dollar bills and dollar value, it's almost like when you travel, it's almost like you got monopoly money. You don't realize, you spend more than you think you should, because you don't realize the value is not built into your brain.
But it better be quickly.
Yeah, but we don't think that way. It takes a while to rewire that.
It does. Yeah. I would say the biggest concern I'd have about any kind of international banking, international business, is fraud.
Okay.
Because that's the thing that you read the most about in the news, right? People, not just China, lots of other places, where Panama, you get ripped off by people, and a lot of that I'm going to blame it on the Americans, because you should have done some due diligence. You should have brought in a lawyer that knows what they're doing to ask the right questions to avoid this. Most of these companies that commit fraud on Americans know you're there, A, trying to hide money, B, trying to move money around, or C, you're retiring, so you're an easy target. You need someone looking out for you. Don't just give $100,000 to someone for precious metals. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. I know it may sound great, it may look great, the presentations are great. Get a lawyer you trust to look over the documents, because I'm involved in one case in Panama right now. 600 American victims, $52 million of fraud on precious metals. So I know what I'm talking about when I say don't do certain things. It's really important someone's on your side, Steve, looking over what you're doing.
So why do people not properly vet and do due diligence? Is it because they don't know they should? Is it because they're too cheap to pay the money for it? Is it because they don't see the value in it?
All of it. And I would say the one thing, Steve, I tell clients at the very beginning, because I'm not cheap, okay, but I tell people at the beginning, you're going to pay me now and you think that's a lot of money. When you lose that $200,000, you need me to go recoup it, you're going to think I was cheap today, because I'm going to be 10 times that amount of money. So I always tell them, protect yourself at the beginning as best that you can by doing the due diligence and hiring the right guys. Sometimes I'm going to tell you to walk away. And I've done it many times. Clients don't want to hear that. They don't.
That's actually true even on the domestic front. So I remember sitting in a panel discussion with a group, and one of the panelists was asked, as a new real estate investor, should I invest money in an attorney to review all the transactions? And the answer is, I don't think you need to do that when you're starting out. I thought, wow, that was probably the worst advice I've ever heard. Because one, if you're starting off and you can't afford to pay the attorney to review your contracts, you probably don't have money to be investing and losing, right?
Right.
That's a problem.
Good
Number
point.
two, as you said, it's never cheaper than today to get the truth and get everything covered.
Right.
Because it's only going to get exponentially more expensive when everything goes down the toilet and goes litigious.
When I'm looking at you right now, I'm seeing a person that's experienced this.
Yeah, well,
I can see it in you.
Yeah,
we
are, my company, when we do our research and due diligence, we pay the attorneys, we pay the engineers, we pay the planners, we go meet with cities, we do all the stuff up front. Right. We commission market studies, those aren't cheap. Soils reports, those are not cheap. But why? Because if you don't do those things properly up front, you potentially lose everything, including a lot of other people's money. We're not doing, we don't play that game.
No.
There's no guarantees, but still, you want to mitigate as much as possible. And so I think if you've got to pay the right people that know things you don't know. You can't know everything. Yeah. And I don't have enough money to do that, to me says you don't have enough money to get into that.
Yeah, and you have to be able to accept their advice. And I think that's the hardest part with people is that, I've done so many deals. I think I've done 100 joint venture deals in China. And I've done so many that I'll tell you this is not going to work, and let me tell you why it's not going to work and when it's not going to work. Don't put your money into this now. You're going to lose it all later, and you're going to be saying, why did I do that?
And so now, why would people not listen? Is it because they're emotionally attached to the vision?
Yeah, I think so.
So one of my hard rules I learned early on, never be emotionally attached to any deal. Everything is for sale every day. And everything has to pencil out.
Great point.
And it's hard to divorce yourself of that. That's why sometimes having partners and consultants you trust is better, because they're looking through a different lens, and they can talk you out of that.
Yeah.
Because in your mind and your heart, you envision something, and isn't this going to be wonderful? And it's hard to let that go. We start rationalizing.
Domestically, you see that, or buy and sell business deals.
Yes.
Because if you're the owner or proprietor of a business, you're married to it. You created it. It's your baby. 25 years of doing it. Somebody wants to buy it for 10 cents on the dollar. You're insulted.
But that may be what it's worth.
It may be what it's worth, but you're not going to accept
5
that.
years from now, it may be worth 1 cent on the dollar.
Right. And we've all experienced those kind of investments.
And especially if you're, a lot of times you feel that way, but you're also tired of doing it.
Right. There's that too. And the buyer
you just don't want to let go.
And the buyer may want to make it better. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, it's already the best. Well, okay, it's your business. You think that way, but I'm paying for it.
Right.
I want to do this. It's going to cost me X to do that.
I think of the McDonald brothers and Ray Kroc.
Yeah.
And how that all went down. And a lot of that was, they ended up losing their name over the whole deal. But they also, I think
that's a great story, though.
The entrepreneur that can build something and take it to a certain point isn't the person that can take it to the next step.
That's true.
Usually, there are the Bill Gates of the world that went from garage to major entrepreneur, but those are rare cases.
Yeah.
There's been a few of those Silicon Valley type stories, but for the most part, an entrepreneurial mindset is not the corporate mindset.
Right.
They're two different things. And so you have to listen to people that vision things differently.
The thing is, Steve, that's really good advice. And the way I tell people that is this. When you start a new business, how do you envision it ending?
Yeah.
You don't know how difficult that is for people to think like that, because they're, what? I've started this. I'm going to put all my blood and sweat into this next 10 years.
And then my children are going to do this after me.
Someone will.
Maybe the children don't want to.
Maybe usually they don't. Secession issues are their own issues.
Most businesses last half a generation past the founder.
Yeah, that's a real statistic.
Yeah.
One kid will come in and do something and then let it go.
Yeah.
The other kids don't want anything to do with it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's true. But I mean, I do try and get people to think about an end game.
And multiple exit strategies. What happens?
You try and get them to think. And there's some good guys in the city, actually, that are excellent in that consulting area, which I work with some of these guys. And if you can get the client at the beginning to say, this is my vision. If I accomplish that vision, I'm willing to sell it at that point. That's a winner.
That's right.
But getting them to that vision point is the hard part. Because at the beginning you're struggling or putting everything together and you can't think about that far down the road.
But when you ask people, why do you want to start a business? Top three answers on the board, if you remember Family Feud, right? It was always,
yes, Steve.
I want to be my own boss.
Yeah.
I want to be financially independent, right? And I want to have my own time.
Yeah.
And then 5 years into a business, how's that going? Well, let's see. I'm the last one to get paid. If I do get paid,
I got no time.
Well, you have flexible time. You can work any 20 hours of the day you feel like, right? Yeah. You're never going to sleep, right? And you're not independently wealthy, and everybody's your boss. Your customer's your boss. The government's your boss. Everybody's your boss, right?
Right.
Your vendors are your boss.
Right.
And so people, I think when they start a business, ought to realize if I'm building this, I'm building it so that at some point the business will pay me not to work there anymore.
Excellent.
And so it has to be an exit plan.
That's the exit plan.
Yeah. So we got to take another short break. When we come back, I want to talk about business entities since we transitioned from banking into business. I want to talk about entities and especially how do we consider structuring a business if we're going to go overseas to do anything. Yeah. This is Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We're talking to Michael Pollan, international business and entertainment attorney, and we'll be right back after this short break.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Choose power today and help us create a cleaner planet. Over the past years, utility prices have rapidly increased. Power provides home energy solutions that would save money. Power is the world's first virtual solar company that aims to adopt sustainable energy worldwide. Our company delivers low-cost, clean, and reliable energy solutions. The solar investment allows you to become eligible for an income tax credit. The solar investment is a great way to provide long-term value. Power is the first solar company that reduces carbon footprint for a cleaner environment. Power is experienced and one of the fastest growing solar companies in the United States, which provide the best solutions according to your needs. Call today for your free solar consultation. Join us as one of our ambassadors and earn $1,000. Earn $1,000 when the installation is completed. Free sign up at www.power.com/marie.waite/ambassador. Feel good about what powers your life. Marie Waite, your solar consultant. 95137855316. Enjoy your life with solar.com.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today we're talking to Michael Pollan, and we've been talking about doing business both domestically and internationally. We started by talking about intellectual property in the first segment. We talked about doing real estate in different countries, and we got into banking and into business. And when we left off, we were getting into some of the issues of owning a business. And what I want to get into now, Michael, is doing business. If you want to do it overseas, you want to do it internationally. And that most people think, I would never enter international business. Well, if you have an internet business, you're probably going to be doing some international business. Where are your products going to come from? Who are you shipping to? You know, there's a huge world out there, and anybody can do an international business, but you may not know which pot you're jumping into. So let's talk about structuring a business. we know there's basic business entities. There's trusts, there's corporations, there's LLCs, there's sole proprietorships, there's all these different things. That doesn't necessarily translate to international business, does it?
Doesn't. And also, one thing to remember is if you're going to be a U.S.-based company versus an international-based company, it's really a very different question. Because a U.S.-based company still has your IRS rules here and whatever entity you file.
That's right.
That's up to you, S Corp, C Corp, limiteds, whatever you want to do, that's here. And you take in investors. But if you bring in investors, that's a whole different conversation. So it's really a different hour with us. Right. But let's assume for the moment that you have a product and you want to sell that internationally. You have market entry issues, you got, expansion of the business, you have joint ventures there, you have partnerships there to launch whatever you're doing. That's all going to be required.
So if I make like this great widget that I put together and I put that ad up on social media and then I get an order from Singapore, I can't just put it in the box and ship it over there and do business there, right?
Yeah, they'll stop you from doing that.
That's right.
Right, okay. And there's customs issues you got to deal with. But I say most American companies, American people that do business internationally are going to set up some type of limited partnership, joint venture on the other side. Because you do need the local partners there to do the business with you, with whatever it is you're doing. How you set that up is really important because that will determine who owns your business. You may think you own it here, but you may sign a joint venture there and give them 60% of the company because you need their money. Right. And you don't know in the contract you signed away the American rights also. That's important. But usually it's joint venture stuff on the other side. So, and there's a way to do it, and there's no follow a diagram. It's not like that. It depends on what country you're in. Like some countries don't even allow joint ventures. They call them something else entirely, and they're in different languages. So you've got to understand that because you're going to tie money up into that, and they're going to tie money up into that, whoever those partners are. But I'd say mostly they don't have S Corp, C Corp, that world. That's just America.
Right.
Right. It's not.
But that's our mindset. Again, that's lose the assumption.
Lose those assumptions. But you got to remember if you have investors on this side, they got to be approving your ventures on that side. You can't just willy-nilly go off and sign documents. So everybody here has to know what you're doing over there. That's hard. It's expensive too. You got to travel. Mm-hmm. You can't just do internet business internationally. Don't think you can because you can't. It's a mistake.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. There's an assumption nowadays that with technology, it bridged all the gaps. So now we don't have to leave our home. We can do everything virtually through Zoom and through email and through websites. And that's not necessarily true. If you're going to go do business ventures, you probably got to get on an airplane and go meet some people.
Okay, here, Steve, here's a really important point. If you're not selling a product, let's remove that. You're just an online business. So my company, the teachmeacademy.com, I have affiliates in like 10 countries. What are they doing? They're taking my products, my courses, they're licensing them from me. I own it all. I don't give any IP away. I don't license IP. You can use this under a specific contract with me, and then we share revenues. I still own it under the U.S. entity.
But they have a right to copy it and distribute it.
They do, based upon what you say they can do. That's the more common way of doing business today. Do I need a joint venture for that? No, unless they want to go do something else with it. Like one company wants to take all their content and combine my content with it and create a separate entity in Singapore.
Okay.
Then now we're talking about something a little bit different. Yeah. It's a new company.
Because they have a product and you have a product.
Right, combining them. Right. That's not me just licensing what my product is. So there are a few dynamics there to think about. But again, that's back to protecting your IP.
Right. And I think a lot of people skip when they think about structuring business and working with people. They miss that you can do licensing agreements and franchise agreements and those type of things that are different than forming an actual business entity with someone.
That's true. Yeah. You wouldn't do franchising internationally. Yeah. That would be a loser. You'd have no control over it. But licensing, if it's your product, you would, or sub-licensing.
Right.
That kind of stuff. Very common.
But then if you're licensing, then we get back to the first discussion we had today, which is that IP. It all comes a circle.
It does. And could you get ripped off somewhat? You could, but then you have to set up structure on this end. For example, if you went to my courses and you tried to steal that from me, I can shut you down. I can give you no access to that anymore. Right. Yeah, you get away with something, but you lost your relationship with me. So what did that get you? I mean, that's why that doesn't happen to me. I mean, because if you want the educational product, you got to work through me. Otherwise, I'm not going to let you do it.
So that means you got to structure your business that the ongoing relationship is where the profit is, not there's no advantage to let's do this one time, defraud them, and run away with the money.
Exactly. And if you're hanging out with those people, they're the wrong people. And you didn't do your due diligence correctly.
And that's the truth too. No matter what you do, whether it's domestic, international, no matter what kind of contract or agreement you have, no agreement is any better than the people that stand behind it.
Yep, absolutely true.
Don't do business with people if you don't trust them.
And walk away if it's a bad deal.
That's
I mean, it doesn't matter how much money's involved. That's where people have to let go of that. Because if you think, oh, that's all I could make a lot of money. You could lose a lot of money.
Or the
your brand.
Or the sunk cost issue of I put so much into it, I can't just let it go. Sometimes,
right.
yes, you need to walk away from that. That was a bad decision. This is your loss.
Right.
And that you call that tuition. You learned.
And it's hard.
Yeah,
but
it's
you
hard
need to do it. Because you sink more into it, you just go nowhere.
That's right. And again, those human things we have in us that, that sunk cost fallacy or the opportunity cost that we have in our brains that tricks us into going down a path that we shouldn't go.
Which gets you back to, why didn't you get the right advice at the beginning?
And listen to it.
Yeah. And listen to it.
Right.
Good point.
So we got to wrap up here. We're down to about the last minute. I want to thank Michael Poland, domestic and international business and entertainment attorney, for being my guest today. Shared a lot of great information. Michael, do you have a website you can share with the people?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my new educational site is called theteachmeacademy.com.
Okay.
And you can find all the info about what we do there, the courses we offer, as well as our history.
So theteachmeacademy.com, check that out. You can check us out every Thursday and every Sunday afternoon on KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, or catch us on Roku, Amazon Fire, Android on the Building Solid Foundations channel, or kcaaradio.com. I'm your host, Steve Matley. This is Building Solid Foundations. I want to thank Michael for being our guest today, and we'll be back next week. Until then, go do something different this week.
This is KCAA.